people are not, well, we all are going to die. So, for heaven's sakes.
Buckle up, because CNN is at it again, folks. When will the mainstream media stop blowing every conservative quip out of proportion just to stir the pot? You saw the clip. Senator Joni Ernst, a no-nonsense Republican, gets heckled with the dramatic, "people are going to die," at a town hall. Her response? Well, we're all going to die. Snarky? Maybe. Honest? You bet. So why is CNN clutching their pearls, painting Ernst as some heartless villain? Could it be because they're desperate for clicks, ratings, and a chance to dunk on anyone who dares speak plainly? And let's talk about that heckler, who screams people are going to die over policy disagreements. Isn't that just the left's go-to playbook? Fear-mongering and theatrics to shut down debate? Ernst didn't back down. She called it like she saw it.
Well, we all are going to die. So, for heaven's sakes.
Isn't that what we want from our leaders? Someone who cuts through the noise instead of adding to it? But no, CNN's got to spin this into a scandal, complete with headlines screaming she's in hot water. Really? Hot water with who? The blue-check elites on X who live for outrage? Then comes Ernst's so-called apology video. Did you watch it? She doubles down tongue-in-cheek in a cemetery no less, poking fun at the hysteria. Is that mocking her constituents, or is it mocking the media's obsession with turning every soundbite into Armageddon? You tell me, don't we need more leaders who refuse to grovel to the woke mob? Yet CNN and their pals at MSNBC are out here acting like she spit on the Constitution. Why? Because a strong conservative woman who doesn't play their game is their worst nightmare. And now, get this, she's NPC meme fodder. You've seen it. Ernst's face plastered on those brain-dead cartoon characters, courtesy of the internet's outrage machine. Isn't it funny how the left calls us deplorables, but loses their minds when we clap back with a little humor? Why can't they handle a taste of their own medicine? That meme's going viral, and you know what? Good. Let's keep the algorithm buzzing. Like the video, smash that subscribe button, and show CNN we're not buying their divisive nonsense. But here's the kicker. While CNN's busy fanning the flames, real Americans are out here making real decisions, like saving money on Medicare. Why isn't CNN talking about that? Probably because it doesn't fit their narrative. So if you're on Medicare, why not take control? Call Chapter at 270-467-2426 and ask how they can find you a plan that saves you cash. Isn't it time we focused on solutions instead of manufactured outrage? So, what's the real story here? Is Joni Ernst in hot water? Or is she just saying what we're all thinking? Is CNN reporting news, or are they just peddling drama to keep their sinking ship afloat? And most importantly, when will we stop letting the media divide us and start rallying behind leaders who tell it like it is? You know the answer, folks. Let's keep fighting the good fight, keep the memes coming, and keep America first. What do you say? Ready to show CNN they can't cancel us?
But GOP Senator apologized sarcastically for her comments at a recent town hall. All right, so this is Republican Senator Joni Ernst. On Friday, she had a town hall in which she was discussing Medicaid reform. There were concerns from the audience about SNAP benefit cuts, and someone shouted out, "People will die." She replied, "Well, we're all going to die," and she's been ridiculed for that. She posted on social media this apology. Let's watch.
I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
So that was her apology. Why can't you just say, "I'm sorry," and leave it at that? Is that out of fashion now, just to apologize and move on?
I mean, the words are important, but I think in this time that we're in, and if we step back, what we saw happen is no different than what we've seen for months at many of these town halls. And while the answer is what we're talking about this morning, it's really the step back and how uncertain people feel about the change happening around them across the country, whether it's specifically the impact on Medicaid, on some of these benefits. We talk about the earlier conversations we've had about the institutions and how they're changing, how it's impacting people in very real ways every day. I think that's what's this reflecting of. It's happening in cities across the country. People are afraid in many cases, and that's what's getting us to this conversation today.
And listen here to House Speaker Johnson explaining how there will be no cuts to Medicaid with Trump's big, beautiful bill that has passed through the House again.
Mr. Speaker, if the big, beautiful bill does add to the debt, will President Trump own that?
It's not going to add to the debt, but I can tell you that President Trump is laser focused on two primary things: delivering on his campaign promises and the America First agenda, which is what a record number of 77 million voters, popular votes, requested and demanded and gave us a mandate to do. But he's also concerned, as I am, as Ron Johnson is, as Rand Paul is, as all of us are, about the nation's debt. And he and I talk about this frequently, and he is excited about changing that trajectory. That President Trump, I think, can be the most consequential president of the modern era because he has these opportunities to do these big things. The One Big Beautiful Bill is a big first step to provide relief for the American people, to give everybody more take-home pay, more money in their pocket, and to change the trajectory of the country. And again, it's the first of a number of steps, and President Trump is committed to doing this.
Mr. Speaker, so does the House bill put rural hospitals and, frankly, the most vulnerable Americans at risk?
No, and you can underscore what I'm about to tell you. There are no Medicaid cuts in the Big Beautiful Bill. We're not cutting Medicaid. What we're doing is strengthening the program. We're reducing fraud, waste, and abuse that is rampant in Medicaid to ensure that program is essential for so many people, ensure that it's available for the most vulnerable. It's intended for young, single pregnant women and the disabled and the elderly. But what's happening right now is you have a lot of people, for example, young men, able-bodied workers who are on Medicaid. They're not working when they can. That drains resources from the people that need it most. And so what we're doing here is an important and frankly heroic thing to preserve the program so that it doesn't become insolvent. This is not going to hurt rural hospitals.
Bottom line, Mr. Speaker, you all had set a July 4th deadline to get all of this passed. Are you confident you can meet that July 4th deadline?
Yeah, they've always discounted us. I mean, I said I would do it out of the House before Memorial Day, and I was laughed at when I said that back early part of the year. But we beat it by 4 days, okay? We're going to get this done. The sooner the better, because all these extraordinary benefits that we're talking about have to happen as soon as possible. And I'm convinced that the Senate will do it, do the right thing, send it back to us. We're going to get it to the President's desk, and we're all going to have a glorious celebration on Independence Day by July 4th when he gets this signed into law.
What's wrong with that argument? Why shouldn't people have to go to work in order to get Medicaid?
Good morning again to you and your audience. Listen, I am a big advocate for work. I have a fierce work ethic. It was something passed on to me by my late father, who was a preacher and a junk man. And every day, he was picking up old junk cars to feed our family. And on Sunday morning, the man who picked up cars that have been thrown away picked up people who've been thrown away. And this is what this legislation does, that they're trying to do. They're going to throw poor people away. I believe in work. And I recently released a study in Georgia that shows that this work reporting requirement, because that's what we're talking about, not work requirements, work reporting requirements is very good at kicking people off of their health care. It's not good at incentivizing work at all. There's something wrong-headed about this kind of view of poor people, of working class people, that somehow they don't want to go to work. We have seen this failed experiment in Georgia. We've got over 500,000 people in Georgia who are in the health care coverage gap. They are largely the working poor. The governor has put a program in place. He calls it prosperity to coverage. You ought to call it, or pathways to coverage. You ought to call it pathways or blockages to coverage, because they've only enrolled about 7,000 people. That's pathetic. And the data clearly shows that if you want to get people to work, the way to do that is to provide them just basic health care so that they don't get sick. And what they're trying to do now is take this terrible experiment in Georgia, force it on the whole nation. And what we will see as a result of that is a workforce that is sicker and poorer and an economy that's weaker.
A direct answer to the question there, but we do need to keep moving because we've got.
Well, I take very seriously my job. The people of Georgia hired me to stand up for them, and this really is a critical week. Yeah. This big ugly bill is going to strip people of their health care. It's going to rob working class people of the resources that they need. Yeah. They're literally trying to take health care from children. Here's a proposal. How about allow the tax cuts to expire for people making over $500,000 a year? If they did that, they wouldn't have to have these draconian SNAP cuts and cuts on health care.
All right.
Why should hardworking Americans foot the bill for able-bodied folks who choose to sit on the sidelines? Isn't it just common sense? Like Speaker Mike Johnson said loud and clear on Meet the Press, that if you can work 20 hours a week or volunteer in your community, you should? Why are Kristen Welker and Senator Raphael Warnock acting like this is some outrageous demand? Are they saying it's too much to ask for a little accountability in a system that's been bled dry by fraud, waste, and abuse? Don't we all know that's exactly what President Trump's fighting against with his one big, beautiful bill? And when Warnock claims this bill throws poor people away, isn't he just dodging the real issue? Why won't he admit that most Medicaid recipients are already working and this is about targeting those who choose not to? Isn't it insulting to the millions of Americans grinding every day to hear Democrats defend a system that lets some game the rules while others play fair? Who's ready to see a reformed Medicaid that respects the dignity of work and saves taxpayer dollars for those who truly need it, like the elderly, disabled, and single moms Johnson's protecting? Now, let's talk about that July 4th celebration. Can you feel the energy? With this bill heading to the Senate and Trump's agenda powering forward, who's pumped for a red, white, and blue blowout to celebrate America's comeback? Isn't it time we honor the land of opportunity by rewarding those who seize it, not those who expect handouts? Who's bringing the flags and fireworks to show the world that under Trump's leadership, we're building a stronger, fairer, and prouder nation? What's your take? How do we keep the momentum going to make sure this bill crosses the finish line by Independence Day?
I think that some of these politicians are underestimating how angry people are and how upset people are. So, I love that you started with apology because it came off incredibly snarky. It was not funny. And I think there's a disconnect in that some of these politicians think that everyone thinks like they do and everyone agrees with them so that they can have a little fun with it. But you can't have fun with the fact that many people do believe that folks are going to die because of some of these cuts. There's nothing funny about that. So coming with a sarcastic apology, I do not think is helpful in this moment. It absolutely didn't meet the moment, but I think it just further inflames people and just makes them more upset.
Yeah, I agree with you there. People are struggling across the nation. They're complaining, rightfully so, to elected leaders at municipal levels all the way up to the federal level about being able to put groceries on the table and being able to afford their regular day-to-day expenses. So when you hear a leader, a politician respond to people in the audience that are expressing real concern about how this will continue to impact them and their families, it's disheartening.
Yeah.
Why are CNN panels and liberal elites so obsessed with pushing a delusional agenda that celebrates self-harm and mutilation as some kind of noble lifestyle? Isn't it obvious to anyone with a shred of common sense that this transgender craze, plastered across headlines, social media, TV shows, and movies, is eroding the moral fabric of our nation? Why do Democrats and progressives keep glamorizing what's clearly unholy, pretending it's progress when it's just chaos? Doesn't it make your blood boil to see them shove this woke nonsense down our throats while ignoring the real issues, like jobs, borders, and faith, that Americans actually care about? And isn't Senator Joni Ernst dead right to call this out, standing firm against the tidal wave of liberal insanity? Why should we let these so-called experts on CNN gaslight us into thinking this is normal or acceptable? Who's fed up with the left's sanctimonious lectures, acting like anyone who disagrees with their radical ideology is just backwards or hateful? Isn't it time we say enough is enough and take back our culture from this woke garbage? Why aren't more leaders following Ernst's lead, speaking truth to power and refusing to bow to the mob? With July 4th around the corner, who's ready to celebrate an America that honors God, family, and common sense over this destructive, delusional agenda? What's it going to take to shut down this madness and restore sanity? More voices like Ernst's, more votes for Trump's vision, or both? What do you say we make some noise and show these woke clowns we're done with their circus?
You think this fades in a day or two?
We move on quickly.
Yeah.
That does not mean that people won't feel the impacts of this. When we think about the actual benefits, we have ideas of what we think that means, as we've talked about with Washington, this big, broad, all these powers. But at the very personal level, for a lot of families, for individuals who need this care, whether it's a senior citizen, someone who's disabled, these have real impacts for them. And people across the country are waking up today wondering, will this change next week? What happens if, in just a few weeks, I lose these benefits?
If there is anything that Democrats don't do, it is move on quickly. Are they so desperate to smear President Trump that they'll cling to a lie even after it's been shredded 1,000 times? Isn't it pathetic how they keep peddling this garbage, pretending it's some smoking gun when anyone with half a brain knows Trump was talking about people defending historical statues, not neo-Nazis? Why do they think Americans are too dumb to see through their spin? And seriously, how much longer are we supposed to put up with this broken record from the left? Don't they have anything better to do? Like maybe address the border crisis or skyrocketing crime, than rehashing a fake scandal from years ago? Isn't it just proof they're scared of Trump's momentum? Especially with Joni Ernst and others calling out their woke nonsense? Who else is sick of the Democrats' obsession with twisting words instead of solving problems? With July 4th coming up, who's ready to ditch this Democrat drama and celebrate an America that sees through the lies and rallies behind Trump's truth? How do we keep hammering home that this hoax is dead and buried? More X-posts, more rallies, or just louder cheers for the real MAGA movement? What's your plan to shut this noise down once and for all?
President Trump's massive agenda is on the line when the Senate returns this week. He posted on Truth Social overnight, calling on the Senate to pass his so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But GOP senators are at sharp odds on how to proceed, with some calling for deeper spending cuts and others fearful about the impact on the social safety net. While many Republicans avoided town halls during last week's recess, the ones who did hold them got an earful.
People are not, well, we all are going to die.
I received overwhelmingly positive feedback about the work that Doge is doing, and
I voted for that bill.
All right, so Joni Ernst, the Iowa senator who said we all are going to die, was responding to concerns over some of the Medicaid cuts and the cuts to the food stamp program that were included as part of the House bill. Just to look on your screen how significant of a pullback it would be if that bill were to become law. And then her Democratic opponent, who was in the crowd when he heard her remarks, called her comment a, quote, jaw-dropping moment. That was from Nathan Sage to the New York Times. And then amid all of this, Joni Ernst taped this video from a cemetery.
I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
It is fascinating. I think in this era of Trump, the idea now is never apologize, never back down. If you do apologize, you're going to lose the support of your base because they want you to be a fighter. And look, the people who disliked you, the people who were in that audience, were never going to vote for you anyway. And then just hope that it sort of blows over at the end of the day. But that it's interesting. Those of us who remember the 2014 race when she was first elected will recall
the pig, the pork.
It was the pig and the pork. But remember, her opponent really got himself in trouble because her Democratic opponent by mocking then Senator Grassley as saying, you know what? He's just a farmer. He's not a lawyer. What does he know? And she used that to great benefit by saying, who does this guy think he is that he calls people who don't have a law degree lesser? And so it sort of feels like a full circle moment, right? Which is mocking this idea while also hoping that in this new era, that works.
Successful tactic?
I don't know. It felt a little tortured to me. Like, I'm not sure. And by the way, if you watch the full clip, in the town hall, she understands the importance of Medicaid in Iowa, and she goes on to say, like, I'm just talking about people who shouldn't be eligible not getting this, but those that are eligible, Medicaid's really important in Iowa. And so she has that and yet that's nowhere in her response to your explanation.
Yeah.
So just being sarcastic, the fact that Democrats seized on this line of hers without actually getting to the broader defense, I think is also a mistake on her part.
I mean, meantime, the Senate comes back this week. They're going to try to put together this bill. There's a lot of debate and division over the House-passed bill, over whether it was too much in spending cuts, whether it was not enough in spending cuts, whether the fact that the Congressional Budget Office says it could blow up the federal deficit. These are the members who are currently opposed at the moment. There are at least 4 of them who have said they oppose to the House bill. Others, many are raising different levels of concern. We just have 6 on the screen, but there are far more than that. How do you see Trump dealing with this at this moment? And what do you think? You've seen these big legislative packages and these big fights happen in other Congresses. How complicated is this going to be to get this across the finish line?
Well, I mean, it's going to be hugely complicated. But I think push forward to the end of the day, it will be shocking if they don't pass this. They have to pass this.
Yep.
The Speaker has said failure is not an option.
Yep.
So one way or another, they're going to put together in the Senate a version of it. It will go back to the House. Everybody is going to have to take a deep breath, hold hands and walk off the ledge together. But they will do it. But then they are going to be vulnerable to what's in the bill.
Yes.
And it's all of the things that they're talking about in the Senate. Not enough cuts for people who think that there ought to be more cuts. Too many cuts for people who say the safety net's going to be shredded. And what about that deficit issue that the Republicans used to care about? So there's all of that's going to be what they come out with. So it's going to be a tortured process. You're going to keep us up to date with it, minute by minute. But you have to assume that in the end, Trump will push hard to make sure they get it.
But they'll have a sales job.
Yes, they'll have a sales job, and they're trying to make something that is too big to fail for the GOP. We'll see what ultimately happens.
Why is it that when President Trump or Senator Joni Ernst use a bit of sarcasm or state plain common sense, the left and their CNN cheerleaders act like it's a federal crime? Yet when Cory Booker or Tim Walz throw around irrational stunts, like their so-called Nazi salute nonsense, why does the media call it bold or progressive freedom? Isn't it infuriating how the left gets a free pass to say or do whatever they want, no matter how unhinged, while Republicans like Elon Musk are vilified for daring to speak truth with a smirk? How is that not a blatant double standard written right into the Democrats' playbook? And what about Joni Ernst stating a simple scientific fact, something so obvious it shouldn't need a second of debate? Why is CNN wasting airtime dissecting her words like she's committed treason, when they should be grilling the left for their endless lies about Medicaid cuts and Trump's big, beautiful bill? Isn't it exhausting how the left spins fairy tales to scare people, claiming Trump's plan will gut healthcare, when it's really about rooting out waste and rewarding hard work? Why can't we focus on real issues like securing our future and rebuilding our economy, instead of getting bogged down in this liberal circus of outrage? And now this. Joni Ernst merely stating a scientific fact which absolutely did not warrant even 30 seconds of time to explain, dissect, or elaborate further. But here we are. Instead, we should be focused on the important issues. But even that seems to be an impossible task as the left continues to spread lies about Medicaid, cuts, and Trump's big, beautiful bill. Well, y'all can believe what you want. I know that for me, here, in my house, we only believe the truth. If you enjoy videos like these, smash the like and subscribe and watch one of the next ones. Thanks.